Hello, Keith, again, and welcome to Insight Readings and to put this Vedic swing on the eclipses that are coming up for us, and also
Hey,
just to bring forward a bit of tarot into that. So, welcome, Keith.
thank you. Thank you. This new moon, yeah, it is an eclipse, but it's such a partial eclipse that I wouldn't really even consider it to be an eclipse of the magnitude as what the upcoming full moon will be that obviously precedes the new moon. Okay.
Yes.
So it's a very, very loaded situation, and it's definitely not a very easy one to read by any means, because it's got so many, so many sort of kind of like opposite things happening simultaneously, really, you know. So if you look at where the sun was for the last little bit, the sun's been traveling through Ardra, which we kind of briefly touched on in the last one. And Ardra is very, very, very intense in terms of a nakshatra, very, very stormy, brings about like very, very tumultuous kind of events. And then the nakshatra after Ardra is Punavasu. So this upcoming new moon is in Punavasu. Okay. Now, Punavasu is kind of almost like the opposite of Ardra in a certain sense, because after the intense storm of Ardra, you get the quietness and the stillness and the nurturing and the rest, and that very, very nice balance and equilibrium that Punavasu suggests. Okay, so Punavasu is it's a very balanced nakshatra. Okay, it's a very, very, very balanced nakshatra. It's very reasonable, So I think one of the key words and one of the key elements that sort of came out of everything that I looked at is like reasonability. Now, I mean, to be fair, you could be like, well, isn't being reasonable all the time quite a good thing? But it's kind of really, it's really crucial to be reasonable now, because things will very, very easily kind of blossom and flourish from this kind of time of equilibrium that we've got. So it's almost like there's a window of reasonability that's opening up, during the new moon, and it's a very, very important time to clear things and to balance things out and to kind of settle things down, because there is another very, very intense wave coming afterwards. So because Punavasu is a very passive nakshatra, it's very easy to just kind of like, relax into things, and then that window of reasonability passes, and then the next storm comes, and then you aren't by any means ready. Like my one friend always told me, there's this Chinese proverb that, like, in times of drought, prepare for a storm. So it's a bit like that. Okay, so with Punavasu, the deity relating to Punavasu is Aditi. Now, Aditi is the mother of all space. It translates into the visible infinity. Okay, so the implications of the actual meaning are really, really deep and really, really profound. Now, for those that are students of Vedanta or Vedantic philosophy, you'll understand that how infinity, which is actually the true nature of the self, can become visible. Which is why Aditi is the mother of all creation. Aditi represents unbounded space, and everything happens within the parameters of space. So even though that space is that emptiness, it's that nothingness, it's also the absolute everythingness. Which is actually also what we are. So in a certain sense, we are absolutely everything, but I mean, we kind of manifest in this realm of space. So Aditi is very, very good for understanding sort of profound philosophical, spiritual truths. So it's a very, very, very a very inspired time. So even things like poetry work very well. And just any kind of philosophical, spiritual inspired thought is very appropriate and is very easily comprehended within Punavasu.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I mean, there are other aspects that reinforce that concept. Okay. Now, the symbol for Punavasu, one of the symbols is an arrow, or arrows in a quiver. Okay. So Punavasu is very, very much about reaching one's goal and returning successfully. So it has a lot to do with cycles and cycles of repetition. So Punavasu has incredible potential to reach its target. So like in Ardra, I mean, in Ardra, kind of like the arrow is shot and it's hit, and in Punavasu it returns triumphantly back. So it has a lot to do with that cyclic repetition. So, but even though it is a passive nakshatra, the thing with Punavasu is to actually take action and to use that energy in order to really attain one's objective and to attain focus, because the arrow represents focus, it represents direction. And Punavasu is kind of pretty much in the tail end of Gemini, which happens to be Sagittarius, which is the sign opposite to Sagittarius. And if you think of Sagittarius also has the archer, with the arrow drawn. So you can see there is a bit of a connection there as well. Okay, so just to quickly have a look at the actual chart itself of the new moon. Okay, let's minimize that. Let's get this out of the way. All right. Okay, this is a sidereal chart laid out in a Western format. Okay, just for the sake of doing something different here. Now, this is for the exact time of the new moon in South Africa, in wilderness. But I mean, like, because the ascendant's in the middle of Taurus, pretty much anywhere in South Africa, you're going to have a Taurus ascendant at the time of the new moon. So if you use this chart in a certain manner of speaking as a horary, you would actually come up with some pretty interesting information. You'll notice that Venus is forming a perfect trine to Jupiter. Well, I mean, Venus is on 9 degrees. Sorry, Venus is forming a perfect trine to Saturn, and Venus is also forming a perfect trine to Uranus within a degree of being exactly on. So it's a very, very, very tight trine. Okay, so there's a Venus, Saturn, Uranus equilibrium that's going on. Okay, now Uranus is that element that really brings about a need for change.
Yes.
Okay, Saturn is a very practical, consolidating energy that has to do with like consolidation, practical considerations, and then Venus is the planet of love and harmony, so a trine again symbolizes equilibrium, okay, in a very, very, very passive state. So you can see the new moon going on in Punavasu and the Venus, Saturn, Uranus trine. There's a certain degree of harmonious equilibrium that is going on, okay, where you could say that like Punavasu also represents, things working in cycles of two, so very often they'll even say that like Punavasu is very good for giving things a second chance, and very often things done under Punavasu only work out the second time around, so there's this element of second chance with Punavasu, which is also, like I said, the arrow returning. It's like it's a cyclic kind of thing. So also potentially a very, very good time for being able to discuss relationship orientated things from a practical consideration, where the necessary change from Uranus can be brought about in a non-erratic matter because it's forming a stable trine to Venus. And then the practical considerations of Saturn will also kind of calm down the very erratic energies of Venus. So you could say potentially a kind of a stabilizing a useful, practical, necessary, stabilizing change within relationships. Okay. Now, the new moon itself is forming an exact opposition to Pluto. Okay.
Wow.
And Pluto's on 25 degrees. The new moon's on 26 degrees. So, I mean, that's a pretty tight opposition. And Sun Pluto oppositions have to do with intense power struggles. Moon Pluto oppositions, the same kind of thing. The power struggles take on a very sort of manipulative emotional context. Okay. So just be very wary, within relationships. So that's why I said this is a very difficult new moon to read, because in a certain sense, there's this state of rest, there's a state of equilibrium, there's a state of balance. But right in the middle of all of this, there's this very, very, very powerful, intense energy. So
Yeah.
as to how those two things will operate simultaneously is going to be very interesting to see. All I can say is, thank goodness that at least there is a Venus, Saturn, Uranus trine. Otherwise, things would be pretty chaotic. Now, something also of very, very, very important interest is Jupiter was retrograde from the 9th of March. Okay, and Jupiter turns direct on the 10th of July, which is just, I think it's 2 or 3 days before the new moon itself. So whenever Jupiter turns direct, that stationary direct point, it tends to kind of really release a burst of energy. Okay, so that's definitely also kind of points to kind of positive change and a little bit of support coming through, and a little bit of spiritual wisdom coming through as well. So because Vasu has the capacity to understand like the deeper, more philosophical things. It's one's reliance on, yet again, and as always, one's reliance of understanding the true sense of self, in which like real equilibrium will be found. Okay, let me stop the share here quickly. Okay, so because Purnavasu represents the visible infinity, you could almost say in a certain sense that Purnavasu represents the self, represents the true self, the actual substance out of which everything manifests itself. So the more you identify with the true nature of the self, the less influence any of this will actually have on you. When I say any of this, I'm talking about any of these things operating in this 3D reality of time and space, where we get attached to our emotions, we get attached to our physical body, we get attached to our minds, our intellects, etc., etc. And then the more we attach to this thing that we think that we actually are, the more effect astrology, etc., and other people's interactions have on us. So if you use the window of Purnavasu to do a little bit of spiritual inquiry into the nature of unbounded space, or out of which everything comes out of, and focus your awareness and your attention on those higher elements, then you'll actually find you'll definitely get more benefits out of this new moon. Because the full moon that follows this new moon is very, very, very hectic. So this is a very good time to be centered, to allow your relationships and your love lives to rearrange themselves into a slightly more harmonious context, because those things are going to be very, very strongly tested at the next full moon. Okay. So, I mean, like I said, it's a very, very tricky situation to read. Like, in the sense that it's very ambiguous. There's a very passive state, but there's very, very, very powerful sort of contentious energy within that passive state. So stay away from power struggles. You know what I mean? Stay away from emotional manipulative games. Keep yourself centered, and just kind of prepare yourself spiritually for this upcoming full moon. You know what I mean? Because you're going to need to be self-centered, and your self-awareness is going to have to be in really the state that it can be, to really make the most out of this new moon. Because not to spread a sense of fear over the next coming full moon, but just to give you heed and warning that it's definitely not going to be a picnic. And the more self-aware you are, the more of a picnic it will be. So the ball's entirely in your court. So I'm very curious to see what the cards actually have to say about it, because the cards are a lot less sort of like intellectually orientated than the whole astrological side of things. So over to you, Lorraine. Let's see what the cards have to say about it. Eh?
Thank you. Keep this new moon eclipse on the 13th. It's around about the 13th that we're speaking about. It's in the sign of Cancer.
No.
Okay, in Vedic it isn't. In Western astrology it is. In Vedic it would be one behind, so that would be in Cancer, Taurus, Gemini.
It's at the it's at the tail end of Gemini.
Okay.
It's at the tail. Well, Purnavasu actually kind of it straddles between Taurus, between Gemini and Cancer. You know what I mean? So it actually bridges the intellectual and the emotional realm.
Okay.
So in Ardra, you've got those very intellectual storms, and in Cancer, you've got the very sort of like emotionally influenced state of being. So Purnavasu bridges the emotional and the intellectual realms together. You know, it's a bridging nakshatra, which creates a state of which creates a state of balance. Which is why it's a very special nakshatra, because it's combining those two things together. And then just to quickly add to something there, you get padas within the nakshatra. And I just need to have a look at something quickly. Sorry, I'll be 1 second here. Share screen. Let's go back to the Vedic chart itself. That's the Western version of the Vedic chart. Okay, let's get this out of the way. You can see in the Vedic chart itself, Sun, the new moon and Mars all fall in the Taurus pada, and there's actually a Taurus ascendant at the time of the new moon, and the new moon itself falls in the second house of family life. You know, so that's why there's a strong bearing on family life and even sort of material. You know, material related practical things, because Taurus is a very earthy, practical sign, you know, but I don't want to get too deeply into padas because that's another whole story on its own. But yeah, if you look at, to answer your question, so Purnavasu is between both Gemini and Cancer.
Okay.
Sure.
So, for Western astrology, we say it is in Cancer, and then for Vedic, because of the degree change, you going with between Cancer and Gemini, or Taurus and Gemini.
It's in Gemini. It's in Gemini.
Okay.
It is in Gemini.
Okay, so the card, the Cancer card, you can see it there. It's card number 7 in the tarot, and it is the astrological affinity is the sign of Cancer, and the key words here is about diligence, willpower, honesty, perseverance, archetype, achiever, control over feelings and thoughts, learning to stick to the right path, trusting in yourself, being determined, asserting your ego, sexual prowess, and wanting victory, and very much using your intuition. And with it being a new moon, there's new developments in this house with this card. But I wanted to add to it. It is the card number 7. In numerology, 7 means. It means that you're realizing perfection. So it brings that into it. And then another card that if we add it up in numerology is the card, the Tower card, which is what you were speaking about, the differences. And I wanted to bring this card in because number 16, this card, sorry, is 16. If you add the 1 plus the 6, you get 7 again. And the affinity to this card is Mars, and we have Mars in retrograde. Okay, and The key words for this is that there's sudden change and external disruption, very much the things you were speaking about, unexpected events or challenges, a breakdown of the old to herald the new, acceptance that no defense is totally secure, and learning to adapt and adjust, and chaos all around. So, like you said, it's the between the two. There's that softness and having perseverance, using your mind, using your intuition, and your willpower and perseverance. But there's also this other side where it can be quite chaotic and quite a difficult energy to deal um, with it. And I thought that those two sounded quite pertinent. And then with the number, both relating to the number 7, realizing perfection.
That is interesting. And a little bit disturbing at the same time, in the sense that does actually kind of like suggest that Pluto opposition to the new moon is going to actually potentially have quite a sting to it. Okay, Pluto is the power of transformation. It's like, you cannot. If you've got an old house that's kind of breaking down and you sell the property, the only way you can build something new and beautiful on this, if you come in, you absolutely demolish the place.
That's it.
So Pluto is a very, very powerful force that has to do with like completely demolishing things. And Pluto and Mars, Pluto is almost like a higher octave of Mars. A lot of modern astrologers would say that Pluto, I don't want to say rules Scorpio, because I really don't agree with that. But Pluto is very much affiliated with Scorpio. And so Pluto and Mars do kind of have a lot in common. They do have a lot in common to a certain extent. And, oppositions to Pluto are never easy. So to have a new moon opposing Pluto, I can't imagine it being a picnic by any means. You know what I mean? But like I said, it's the only way out of any situation is through identifying with who you actually are. So long as you know who you actually are, you'll be completely unaffected by any apparent external events. You know what I mean? Because you are unaffectable. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's you were here before you were born. You're going to be here after you die. So all of these things that are happening can't be happening to you. You know what I mean? So it's just like, so the more familiar you are with that concept, and the more you understand, the true nature of the self, the more you can just become the observer of these events that are going on around you, and just allow the movie to play on, and do your best to creatively direct the movie, but not be attached to the results of the movie itself, because they're actually only kind of like, ego related. Is like, as soon as you become attached to results, because the results of the movie aren't entirely up to you. You know what I mean? You do your best, and what happens, and you take it like that.
And it is life. It's life. Life goes on, and we have to live with it. We have to work with the energies. You're either going to fight it or go with the flow, like the chariot. It's in the mud, and you can pull it out using your wisdom, your perseverance, your insight, and willing what you want into a new beginning and moving forward, definitely. But there are things that are going to be broken down. They have to be broken down, right down to ground level to get a new beginning. To let go of what doesn't serve us. It's going to happen worldwide as well.
Completely, yeah. Because I mean, even the chart itself. I mean, it had the Taurus ascendant, which means that it would obviously have had a Scorpio 7th house. So there's that whole sort of Venus Mars. It's going to be very, very challenging for relationships. And I mean, this is kind of like, this new moon is going to be a time, like I said, because Venus forms a trine to Saturn and forms a trine to Uranus. There's that Uranus is trying to create change. Okay. And that Plutonian energy is going to just definitely create change regardless. Okay. And the Venus trine to it just means that you can potentially have a passive, reasonable response to it, because one of the key words and one of the beauties and one of the jewels that can be extracted out of Punarvasu is reasonability. It's one of the most reasonable of all the nakshatras.
Okay.
So just basically pray to the angel of reason that reasonability will be on your side, so that regardless of what chaos could unfold, if you remain reasonable within it,
Yes.
what does it actually matter? What does it actually matter?
Yes.
It's only your ego that cares. So same thing, use their spiritual wisdom to get past all that absolute nonsense there.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to add 3 cards for this, and then see what information we get just with 3 cards on this eclipse of the 13th. And
Sure.
already one has come out here, and that is the 7 of Wands, and that is standing your ground in a very passionate, fiery way, because it's rods. But you are on upper ground, the obstacles are in front of you, and you have it, and it's card number 7. Can you believe it? Isn't the universe magical? I mean, there we go with another 7. So standing your ground, you're going to have to, using your solar plexus, you can see there, and then also the red, the passion and the fire, your life force.
Also, if you think of seven's also the 7th house.
Yeah.
The seventh house is all about one-on-one encounters, confrontation. You versus the other person.
Yes.
The whole sort of Plutonian opposition thing is also very, very much along those realms.
Yes. So there will be obstacles. They're all in front of this person on the card, but you stand your ground against them. So that's pretty good. And the next one is the Fool, which is a major arcana card. And once again, we see all that yellow there, really that life force energy. And this is just taking that leap of faith, stepping over that cliff. There's something that's going to catch you. The universe has your back. So throwing caution to the wind and stepping forth, in that childlike way, not worrying about everything, hanging on to old things. Put them in the little knapsack like he has there. You've learned your lessons, carry them with you, and just step forward, go forward.
Yes, yeah.
And
also
then the little dog, the trusty dog.
And it's also, it's zero.
Yes.
It's zero, it's nothingness, it's emptiness. That's Punarvasu. It's that complete empty space of, just allowing things to be.
And the Tower card, where everything is leveled down to ground zero.
Yeah, and that's Pluto.
Just taking that step forward again. And then a last one, the 4 of Cups, and that is offers coming in, but feeling disillusioned. Even though there's an offer or an opportunity, you're not even focused on it, as you can see in this card, because he has fulfillment, but it doesn't fulfill him. So it's being grateful for what you have, because that will attract more in, and not sitting there in disillusionment, because you have a possibility of missing offers. So if your emotions are making you feel disillusioned, you could be missing out on something. And I can see you itching to speak there. Go for it.
Yeah. That also relates a lot to Punarvasu, because Punarvasu is like I said, it's a very passive nakshatra. So one of the things with Punarvasu, it needs to actually use its strength to draw that bow, to shoot that arrow, and then it will reach its target. So it's almost like it has the tools necessary. What it needs to present to itself, but because of its passivity or passiveness, very often they say things like, "What's the use?" or "What's the point?" Those are very kind of Punarvasu overly passive words. I mean, even if you think of the word passive and punavasu, even sound quite similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So there
You
we
know,
go.
so,
Standing your ground for what you believe in and what you want. Um, with all the obstacles, you still have the courage to stand your ground, very much like that Cancer card, having victory as well. Stepping forward, having the faith, and don't be bored or disillusioned because there are offers coming in, but you're not even focused on them. So you need to put your focus where you want. You attract what you focus on, definitely, and you need to keep that focus, you know. So that's the cards for this.
very interesting. Very interesting. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. It's amazing, actually. Yeah. Yeah. So lots of seven coming through.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Lots of seventh house stuff going on. You know, it's, you know, the ruler of the seventh is in the ninth. Yeah, definitely. You know, it's going to be it's going to be an interesting time. It's going to be an interesting time. It's always, I mean, for years, I've actually tried to have a look at, like, you know, if you read the full moon chart, if it tells you more about the month than what the new moon chart does, and, you know, kind of the jury's still out on that. But I mean, I often find that if you look at a full moon chart, it kind of tells you a lot more about the energies that kind of happen over the month. You know, I mean, because I mean, almost like things are born at the new moon, so they're not very obvious to see, but they
yes,
peak at the full moon, so
yes.
they become very, very obvious. You know, so,
There's a
you know, obviously,
the culmination at the full moon of all those things.
sure. And I mean, even if you just look at what's been going on in general, you know what I mean? That Mars Ketu conjunction, which is getting tighter because Mars is retrograding towards an exact conjunction to Ketu. We've had Mercury opposing that, so there's already been so much contentious energy, so much strain within relationships, and, like, you know, the whole power struggle theme has been a constant thing which keeps on coming up again and again. And, you know, I think basically things are going to kind of sort of reach a peak now where, you know, this is kind of the last sort of chance, the second chance to really stabilize and fix things. And anything that's no longer really appropriate in terms of, like, you know, connections to people in your community, connections to certain friends, connections to intimate relationships. You know, it would not surprise me if a lot of those things get completely severed over the next while. And if that be the case, it would be completely necessary.
Yes.
You know, because that's kind of just, it's, everything seems to be pointing in that direction.
Well,
From the last new moon to this new moon to the next full moon. So anything that survives that degree of turmoil is something that's very appropriate for your life.
yes,
So whereas anything that gets removed in that turmoil, be grateful, because in the long run, it needs to get out of your space in any case. Because
absolutely.
indeed, to space, you need to empty things like the Fool. You need to take that leap, let go, surrender completely, and you use that Punavasu window of opportunity to tap into that spiritual knowledge, especially now with Jupiter turning direct. You know, wisdom is going to be a little bit more clear and a little bit more freely available. You know, so honor Jupiter. You know, tap into that wisdom, and everything will be fine. You know, I mean, even like the Fool card is yellow, Jupiter's color is yellow as well. You know, so you can see that encouragement of that expansiveness, you know, and that freedom will come from just possibly stepping over the cliff. And the little barking dog at his heel, I mean, that's also Saturn in Muller, right? And Muller is ruled by Jupiter, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So Muller's in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So you can see there's a whole tapestry of a story which is going on there, where, like, you know, that Saturn in Muller, which is something which is still happening at the moment, is definitely causing things to slowly come to an end. And, you know, all these oppositions and all these power struggles and all these Plutonian kind of breakdowns and all of the strong Martian energy is really going to obviously be the catalyst that creates these things. You know, so this Punavasu little new moon might be just a little bit of a rest, gather yourself, get some spiritual wisdom, get yourself centered, and then let's get ready for the next wave of moving through with our lives.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been lovely to share with you. Hey?
Thank you,
Okay.
Keith.